Welcome to the dungeon. Dum dum dum. It's me and
Hey, Sheedia.
Chereese.
Hi, listeners.
What's up, people? Today I wanted to talk about your story, the Chereese story, and specifically how you've been coming home to yourself, and it's been a journey. We talked about the authenticity and like the prize and I always get confused. Price and prize of authenticity, but what is your story look like, And yeah, I would love to share that. I know a lot of it, but I'm sure some of it I don't know either.
Yeah,
So, how has your journey been?
I think it's very interesting you talk about
The
coming home. I know this podcast
Yeah.
you already started with your previous co-host was Jamaican, and that was based on you having had experience in Jamaica. And I know in some ways Jamaica feels like home to you. I've been
Yeah.
traveling for 4 years, 5 years, four of them in Mexico, one in Chicago, or two. But I've just come home to Jamaica after at least 4 years of being away. And before we came on the
Mhm.
call today, I also mentioned to you that what I thought was just a short couple of weeks visit looks like it might be a couple of months. And it looks like it might be a couple of months because there is a distinct feeling of coming home that I didn't expect to have, that I feel, that's wanting me to stay around. So for context, part of the reason why I haven't been home in Jamaica has been I've been excommunicated from my family on the basis of identifying as a queer woman. Specifically, the terms that are closest to how I express currently, because I think labels are always limiting. We're very fluid beings. But currently, I would say I'm a
Mhm.
pansexual woman, meaning I can have pansexual and panromantic, meaning I can have sexual and romantic relationships with everyone of any gender expression. And I'm also a polyamorous woman,
Mhm.
which means that I don't think that love is limited to just one person. And I try to explore and expand expressions of love in general. And so my
Yeah.
expanded view of love got me kicked out of my family, which meant that after the pandemic, I didn't have a home to come home to. I'd been traveling during the pandemic, and my parents basically said I was no longer welcome there. So I had no home to go home to. Hence the start of my digital nomad journey in Mexico. And for listeners, I do want to plug that I do have a podcast called Adventure in Authenticity that talks a little bit more about this if you want to listen to that as well.
Yes.
But
Yes. You go
yeah, I
way
go
deeper
way deeper there for sure. But coming home this time around, it really happened because I had reached a certain level of frustration emotionally in Mexico, specifically in Tulum. Things were not flowing, and I just felt a strong urge to visit Jamaica. And circumstances happened where I could. And as I am visiting Jamaica, I am able to recognize that there's been an evolution that I've gone under for the past 4 years that has me walking the same steps that I walked 4 years ago, but at a different perspective, at a different point of view. And that's really fascinating because there's
Yeah.
a way that I understand myself that I had to leave home to be able to do. That now that I'm back home,
Mhm.
I actually feel so much more secure in myself, and home feels more like home. It's so wild. It's really wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think specifically this conversation is important because I don't remember what the specific number is, but there are millions of Caribbean people living in the diaspora. It is one of those regions that a lot of people migrate away from for various reasons. Oftentimes it's economic, but I think this feeling of coming home is something that those people have all experienced or want to experience, because not everybody gets to experience it. Um, and it's also an experience for the people receiving those people, right? And you're sharing it from your perspective and your story, but there's so many different perspectives of why people left and how they feel coming back. Like some people do not even want to come back, you know?
I
And
didn't think I
so,
wanted to come back. I didn't think Jamaica
true,
had
true.
space for me as a queer woman,
Mhm.
because of how my family had treated me. So I didn't even want to come back myself. I've been resisting it for years, but life made it happen and I actually realized there is more space for me here to be my fully expressed self than I had recognized.
Yeah, yeah. How old were you when you left?
30. So it was also just a very
Okay.
interesting year. 30 is a big year because for me,
Mm-hmm.
30 is like, okay, if I didn't know I was an adult before, it's definite at this point. You know what I mean? Like there's no doubt. Um, but yeah, I left when I was 30, meaning the last time I would have been in Jamaica. Before this time around was I left February 5th, 2020, and I came back to Jamaica after 4 years of being away, which is the longest I'd ever been away, on May, middle of May of 2024. So that was 4 years.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because in Curacao, we have every year about 300 students go to study in the Netherlands. And, we are Dutch citizens. And so you get, they call it a scholarship, but it's basically full on a
Mm.
loan that you get to study in the Netherlands if you choose to. And something that I've realized with people that have left is they do it right before, like, that's their first step as an adult, right? So when they've lived in the Netherlands their whole adult life, their whole experience of forming themselves and making decisions on their own without their parents is in another country. And specifically those that didn't have a very great experience living here, they will come back and think that it's the same, not understanding that the life that they left was created by their parents. And so, yes, things are definitely different in the Netherlands. Like, I'm not denying that. But also, the sense of freedom that they think they have is not necessarily because of the Netherlands, it's because they're now adults living there that can make their own
Yes,
decisions.
I feel that for sure.
So when I have that conversation, yeah, when I have that conversation with people, they're like, "Oh, you're right." Because I've left and I came back as well, but not for long, and I didn't like fully lived in one place. I was a missionary, but it's similar to being a digital nomad. And people are surprised how comfortable and happy I am here. I'm like, I mean, the limitations that you thought were there are not actually real. They're only real because you're stuck in a certain circle, which, based on your upbringing, you're there, but there is so much more to explore on this little island, quote unquote. Like it's a little, but not really.
And let's go back to the fact that you are moving beyond a perspective that was set up before for you, right? So your family had set up a certain perspective. I Moving from Jamaica at 30 wasn't the first time I've left. I've also lived between 17 and 20. I lived in Trinidad and Tobago. And then
True.
between 28 and 30, I lived in Chicago. So I've had experiences outside. However, what's different about this one was I was always very psychologically connected to my family. We were a very strong family unit. And so whether or not I was branching off in some way, the family rules to some degree still determined the way I saw life. And so, for example,
Yeah.
certain freedoms that I have now, which is which to someone else might just be normal, like, I don't know, the freedom to just date anybody. I'm not even talking to date gaily, just to date. For me,
Mm-hmm.
to date felt so radical because I was coming from this very tight knit Christian context that really, you're just supposed to court someone and then God is going to tell you who your husband is and then it's just going to happen that way. So I may have been dating even when I was in close relationship with my family, but it always felt like I was pushing against some some limit that was trying to contain me.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of different
Yeah.
different things. What I feel now, and this is the bittersweet side of just being completely cut loose. I mean, I have not had conversation with my parents or siblings for 4 years. But what has happened is I've gotten to release slash question and reinforce in some cases the limits that my family put on me. Some of the things I may have
Yeah.
reinforced are the value of spiritual search, whereas I may not search spiritually in the same direction that they do. My family definitely taught me the discipline of seeking after knowledge and wisdom in life. And that's something I've reinforced.
Mhm.
Some things I've just completely dropped is shame around my sexuality, including shame around my sexuality as a queer woman. And I do want to talk about this one because this has been the key thing for me coming back to Jamaica that's been very surprising. And I felt it when you said, yeah, the freedom that a lot of the young people from Curacao feel when they go to the Netherlands is not just because it's only in the Netherlands you can experience this level of freedom. It's because you've exited a predetermined, pre-designed way of being that was represented by your family or your previous circumstance. Now that I've come
Yeah.
back and I'm not even, I mean, I people ask, are you going to see your parents? I'm not interested because we're not in alignment. If we were in alignment, I would be interested, but I'm not interested. So what has happened is I've naturally aligned with people who are more aligned with me. And I remember writing in my journal, maybe after the first 2 weeks of getting back. The first 2 weeks of getting back, I was staying with a friend of mine, and I had another friend visit me, and it was just a house full of love and support and family, and like a family sensation. And I remember writing, by coming home to myself, I've come home to the people who can accept me as I am. And
Mm-hmm.
by being radical about being authentic, though for many years it felt like that decision caused me so much strife and pain, I think now as I am settling more and more into my authenticity, which is the coming home to self, but as I'm also settling back into Jamaica, the things that I'm attracted to and the people that are attracted to me are just more delightful. And so Jamaica's sweeter than before because guess what? Newsflash, there are a shit ton of queer people here that I didn't even realize. And if I wasn't walking freely in my queerness, I wouldn't have realized, right? You can't fit that many
Yeah.
queer people in the closet. You have to get out of the closet to meet them. You know what I'm saying? Like how many people can you fit in a
Yeah.
closet?
Yeah.
Um, and it's fascinating because this week just last weekend I went to a pride event here. So we have a couple of pride months in Jamaica. Technically Jamaica's pride month is in August, but it seems that
Uh-huh.
we've also are observing the US or North American pride month, which is June. So I went to a rave this
Mm-hmm.
weekend that was a part of Pride Day celebrations. And there were hundreds of people in that rave, which for me, I've never in Jamaica been in a very clearly stated gay space with hundreds of people. I've never had that experience before. And it was just heartwarming because I'm just existing as myself. They're just existing as their selves. And we're doing it in a place that I hadn't thought we had space to do it before. The space is being opened. It is being opened. And it's still a delicate issue. There's still a lot of homophobia here. But the point is to come home to my authenticity means that if there is anyone who's aligned with it, I will then be more likely to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to. I've been before, but I wasn't really involved with it. But last year I went to Pride Walk, which is like obviously we have Pride Week. I think there's Pride Month and Pride Week all happening at the same time. But then there is this one parade where they like walk around with like the a big ass flag and like everybody dress up and it ends in like this little, you could call it a festival, but it's a small one. Um, and it was so liberating for me. And I went with the intention to support someone. So it wasn't I was a bystander like I was before. It was literally somebody that was a little bit uncomfortable being out and about, showing people that they're part of that community. And so supporting this person was very liberating to me. And it's interesting because I don't identify as part of the LGBTQIA plus community particularly, but I support like all the way. And so I didn't have any of the shame and like the baggage that comes with it. You know, that shame that a lot of people carry throughout their childhood and sometimes even into adulthood. So I could freely support and it was so liberating for to I think just seeing people being
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah, that's what's
right?
liberating for
And
sure.
that, creating that safe space for people to be themselves and being part of it, but also giving space for the people that's actually in that to take center stage and enjoy. Like I don't need the pride
Yeah.
parade for myself, right? So, yeah, it was very beautiful
Yeah.
to
What's
support
interesting is
that.
in the 4 years I was in Mexico, I've never been to a pride event. I couldn't. It was too
Okay.
emotional. It was too hard. It was too much of a reminder that my
Mhm.
sexual identity has cost me my family. I couldn't. But since I've
Yeah.
been back here, I mean, all of my friends are queer. I hope they're out because I just said I feel so funny. It just feels like, honestly, all of my friends are queer in some way or another. And it's not like my friends are
Yeah.
queer because I'm looking for queer friends. It's just I'm here, people who feel attracted to me and I feel attracted to. I look at them and they're mostly queer women and queer men. Um, and when
Hmm.
I see that, I'm like, I have a whole community. Like my community, my 10 people who are around me, mostly queer and or allies. It's not this radical thing that it no longer has this tinge of, oh, I've lost my family, so this identity. But I think when I was traveling, it felt too hard for me to celebrate that. I couldn't because I was in so much grief. I was grieving so much what I'd lost
Yeah.
because of how I chose
The
the
price,
price.
yeah, the
But,
price
but
was high.
here's the next thing too. It's so ridiculous, homophobia. Like, it's, I really feel like
Yeah.
ideally, we don't even have to identify as gay or not gay. I'm just a human. Like, honestly, I just feel like a human existing. That's literally all
Yes.
I feel. And even when I was in the queer space, I told you at the rave, all I saw was just people being themselves. And I'm thinking in that moment,
Yeah.
why do we have so much hate for people just expressing? Like, it makes zero sense, but people will create whole identities around hating how someone expresses. And I'm like, I don't understand unless this person is murdering you, hurting you, abusing you. Why? Where is that hate coming from? It feels ridiculous to me.
It's it's ridiculous, but it's also real. And it's man-made, right? Like I can't tell you the entire history around gay and homophobia. Like I don't understand fully where it's created. I do hear stories here and there, but I do know that it is created. And I'm in the process right now of understanding even deeper of how racial issues are created. And I'm like, all of this is just freaking man made. But they have The reason why it's so real is they create quote unquote science to back it up, and they use divine scriptures to back it up. So I don't remember, like, again, I'm not very factual about this, but I saw somebody post the other day that it wasn't until a few years ago that, maybe not a few, like 50 years ago or something, that the whole biblical thing of homosexuality, apparently homosexuality appears in the Bible, and that was added on, right? This whole idea of homosexual, like the word and how it relates and that it's unnatural and all that stuff, I believe that was created in the 70s, you know? Um Again, don't take my word for it, go research for yourself. For me, it's not really that important. What is important to me is that it's all freaking man made. And so we have to be very careful that the fears that we're taking on is just man made. You know, like fear is not good for your body. But homophobia is a real fear. Like, I've seen people literally terrified. I've also seen people terrified of another race. I've seen it from white people being terrified of people of color. I've also seen it of people of color being afraid of white people. Because I was in a village in Uganda where they've never seen a white person before, and these kids were terrified. They just cried, screamed, and ran away, right? That's not a racial thing that was created in that child, but just the fact that somebody's so different was so shocking to this child's
Mm.
system, you know?
So I
So
guess that's it.
it
It's like, are
is,
you able to tolerate differences? This is the
yes,
thing. So if we're
yes.
living in a society that's saying conformity is the ideal to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
then whoever doesn't conform is a threat to that. And I suppose that
Yep.
would make sense. That would make sense. And so, but then I guess the beauty of diversity is learning to be with our differences and still be with ourselves. This is the thing, just because I'm gay doesn't mean you have to be gay. Like, it really doesn't. And you accepting my gayness doesn't automatically make you gay. Just because I'm
Yeah.
black doesn't mean you have to be black if you're a non-black person. But what is it? We come back to the coming home because I think, I can be more tolerant of differences with people when I am more secure in myself. And what gives me
Yes.
security in myself is it's a little bit ethereal. I don't know if I can fully express it in words, but having traveled 4 years without the support system that I thought was my bread and butter, and surviving,
Mm-hmm.
not just surviving, being provided for, meeting amazing people. For example, Jamaica just went through a hurricane. I had people from all over Mexico who I've met one day, maybe spent 20 days with them, spent whatever, messaging me, making sure I was okay. Like, I had a friend's aunt who I had spent some time with in Oaxaca who messaged me, I haven't talked to this lady in 2 years. And for me, when I look at that,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I was really loved in Mexico. Like, people care about me. And these are people who don't know me, who didn't know me until that moment, but were able to care for me. All of that to say, those people, plus the many magical slash intuitive slash manifestation stories I have, has created a certain level of security in myself where I understand that someone else's rejection of me or difference from me doesn't interfere with my ability to live my ideal life. Like, me and my
Yes.
understanding of life, source, universe, God, spirit, we are the people who are in charge of what Cherise is going to experience in her reality. Someone else not being in
Mm-hmm.
alignment with that doesn't threaten my reality. My reality will always be my reality. And so, from that place of
Yeah.
security, it's a little bit easier to accept people who are different. I will say it's challenging to accept people who are different, who are attacking me, whether it's emotionally or directly. I'm not yet zen enough to fully deal with that. Like, I'm working on my
Turn
Zen.
the other cheek.
I'm working on my Zen, but I'm not yet fully Zen enough to just be like, oh yeah, you can keep calling me abusive names and I'm just gonna be here like, you don't affect my reality. Working on it. Um, so I guess that's it. And so maybe, my question for people when they feel so offended by someone's difference is, how safe do you feel in yourself? Like, is that person's
Mm.
difference threatening an unstable sense of self? And then how can you create some stability around that sense of self?
I have a very good analogy of this. So I'm going through a process right now where I feel like the growth that I'm, the direction of growth that I'm experiencing and the way that I'm being empowered within myself is actually removing me a little bit from my family, or removing me a lot from my family. And I don't necessarily like that, but it's a choice, you know? I didn't experience the excommunication that you experienced, and I don't really think I will either, based on just how my family is. But in some ways, it does happen, in that they do not respect or accept my decisions, um, who I am. The more I come home to myself, it feels like the further away I am from my family. And not everyone in my family, certain family members, let's be clear. And the other day, I was having a breathwork session, actually 2 days ago. And what came up for me was like, without my family, I feel like my foundation is gone, which is literally a example you used. My foundation is gone, my identity is gone, my safety net is gone, and I felt very
Mm-hmm.
exposed. And then when I finished, this thing came to mind, the tree planted by the water that bears fruits in its time from Psalm 1. That came to my mind, and I was like, that's literally how I feel. I feel like I don't have, I'm not planted by anything. I'm floating somewhere without that foundation. And then I realized I can be my own foundation, right? I can grow my own roots, and I can be very strong and independent within
Mm-hmm.
myself. And then I started thinking, oh, but that means then that I don't have support, because I do believe community is important. But that's not true. In fact, when you are very rooted within yourself, you can have community
Absolutely.
easily. Because one something that's been a hindrance for me sometimes with having community is my family is very critical of who I have community with. Not that they've had much of a say in it in the past since I've been an adult. They haven't had much say in it in affecting my choices on the big scheme of things, but it does create this untrustedness of myself, of can I make the right decisions, right? Because they are also the type of people that say that if somebody they told me not to deal with, which is basically everybody, it doesn't work out, they'll say, see, I told you, see, I
Right.
told you, right? And that creates this sense of distrust to myself and kind of places the trust within
Yeah.
them. But if I'm that tree with deep roots and
Mm.
independent within myself, that can trust
Mm-hmm.
myself, right? I can bear my own fruit. I don't need to rely on your watering or your support or your whatever to to bear fruit. And my fruits will attract the people. Me showing myself in all my splendor and who I am will attract the right people to me. I don't need to worry about
Absolutely.
that. So, moving away from that, from the original foundation and safety net, and choosing to be my own tree, my own strong trunk with my own roots, means that I can be myself.
I,
And I get to have new people that support me in so many ways that I do not get it from my
Yeah.
family.
Wow. I want to add some nuance to that of the,
Yeah.
being able to trust in yourself. I think it's a two-part thing. It's trusting in myself, and I also trust in the thing that's greater than me. Let's call it source. Some people call this source energy.
Yeah.
But something has come to me where, quite practically, a lot of the things we need, it doesn't just happen with ourselves. Quite practically, let's just say food. I rely on a system of an
Mhm.
agricultural system that exists. Somebody out there makes food, they take it to a supermarket, I go buy it. Like, I'm not at the point where I'm self sufficiently pulling from the earth. But even if I was, even then, the earth would have been a resource for me. Community or family or
Yeah.
friends, these are people who provide things you need, a sense of belonging, love, physical touch, those kind of stuff. What has happened for me in the past is I may lose a friend or a lover or a family member, and I'm like freaking out because I've lost this source that I need.
Mhm.
What has
Yeah.
helped me is to understand the difference between the source, ultimate source, and resources. What are resources? Resources are reusing the source, redirection of the source. So basically, if
Yeah.
my family, my friends, my job, my career, my even my physical beauty, whatever it is, it's a resource of source energy. If any one of those things falls off, it doesn't mean that I don't get source. It just means that that resource is no longer the channel by which I'm going to get source.
Mm. Dang.
And so for me, that has helped un montón in Spanish a lot with being able to
Mhm.
detach when things fall apart. And detachment doesn't mean I don't feel emotion. I feel all of my emotions. However, I don't try to
Yeah.
control situations. So if a lover situation falls apart and I can see very clearly this is no longer a safe resource for me, I will allow it to fall apart, but I'm not now in despair saying, oh my gosh, I don't have anyone to hug me and I don't have anyone to kiss me and there's no one who's going to care about my day. It's like, no, my needs still matter. Let me go to the original source. Hey, spirit. Hey, God. Hey, ancestors. Those are how I kind of see the original source these days. I'm wanting this. Can we find another resource to get it to me? And that level of faith that I walk with, it requires a level of continuous vigilance. You mentioned a Bible verse, and it's so funny that we're going to be quoting Bible verses because just a couple episodes ago we were burning fire on Christianity, right? This is
Yeah.
the irony of it.
But it's part of
It's a
our
part of our
foundation
foundation, and
too.
it has there's some things in it that feel relevant, at least resonate with me still. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things that resonates with me is this idea of ask and you will receive, not just because of somebody told me so, it's because I felt it. I felt repeatedly, ask and you'll receive, be my reality over many years. And oftentimes I receive in a way I didn't know. I'll take cuddles for example. I'm a physical touch person.
Hmm.
I love physical touch, but I don't have one partner. I don't have a partner that I live with that's my dedicated partner. I don't have that. I'm a nomadic woman living the world.
Hmm.
And I've had moments when I've said to the universe, like, I'm not trying to find a boyfriend, girlfriend, but I do want cuddles. How are we going to work this out? And I've had cuddles come to me in the most creative ways possible. In Tulum, I went to this event called Conscious Intimacy Games. And it was all about learning conversational skills as well as physical consent skills related to being intimate with other people. It was not sexual, but it was sensual. And there was a part of it that included just a big cuddle puddle. And it was so funny because literally just that week, I was there saying to the source, my body needs cuddles. I don't have a partner. I'm not trying to I don't want to have to build a whole relationship just to get cuddles. Where am I going to get it? And this event just showed up. And I've also found in different times I've aligned with friends who also love to be cuddly. Like, I'm not short of cuddles. I don't have a partner. I'm not short of cuddles. I have friends who love to hug me and all of this kind of stuff. The point of that is I am not so dependent on the resource that I'm like, oh, I don't have a partner, so my needs aren't going to be met. It's like, no, I don't have this resource. Okay, what is the
Hmm.
need? And trusting that that need will find itself to me. And this has happened to me in many, many different ways. So it is, yes, trusting
Yeah.
in the self, but it's also for me trusting in the technology of ask and you will receive and allowing things to come to you
Hmm.
even in unexpected ways.
Yeah. And I would even go further and say ask and receive from people
Mm,
too, right? Because actually, I talked about this when we talked about racism and stuff like that. Like, you got to get comfortable asking, and it's not just like, oh, go ask everybody you know for what you need. But I think sometimes we have this urge to ask and we don't, right? And I I felt it the other day. I was getting a massage and I wanted to move because the little circle that your head
that's always the
faces in,
most
it was
uncomfortable place for
uncomfortable.
me. I can hate that shit.
Yes, I don't know. It looks like it's supposed to be comfortable. It's not. And I wanted to move up, but I don't know, I felt so afraid to ask the guy because I he was like really into it. And then I was like, no, why is this such a big deal? And I just asked, and my massage was way
Yeah.
better because of that, right? So I think it's important to ask source, but when it feels like source or something within you is directing you to ask somebody, do
Yeah,
it.
fair enough.
Like, don't shy away from it. Boldly do it whenever possible.
Yeah, well, that's, as you said that, I'm gonna take that on this week because I do realize, yeah, I feel sensitive to asking directly to people sometimes because I don't want a rejection.
Hmm.
But then my first point even follows where, okay, so what if that person rejects me? That doesn't mean I don't get what I want. I just don't get it from them, you see?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that would help us a lot
yeah,
with relationships and relating. And this kind of comes back to even about back to how I see polyamorous relationships. I believe in polyamorous relationships because I don't think it's very likely that one person will provide all of your needs. No, I also want to
yeah.
clear up where polyamory doesn't always have to be that you're having sex with more than one people. I've told you already, Sheedia, I see you as a
Yes.
lover. I hope your partner doesn't hear it and think that you're cheating on
Hmm.
them because that's not the case.
I see you
I
as a
see you
lover
as a
too.
lover, right?
As
We
well.
share love, we share good energy, we share positive
Yeah.
intentions, we look out for each other, we want each other to be well. That's how I see it. And I think if we were able to societally recognize that that's what relationships ultimately are, I want you to be well, then there becomes less of this desire to control somebody where I want to possess you. Because what if I cannot give you everything you need to be well? Right? So what if you needing to be well, you like dicks, I don't have one. Okay, let's put it that's like that's a
Yeah.
big example. But there's certain things that's one thing. With certain friendships I have, maybe there's a certain level of presence I don't feel with them, but we can have a lot of fun. So I know this is a relationship I'll have like if I want to go out and I want to go be active, sure. But if there's someone I want to sit
Hmm.
with and have deep conversation with, there's someone else I'll talk to. Or if there's someone I want to share fitness um, experiences with, right? And this again, it doesn't have to be sexual. It's not like all of them have to be sexual. I don't see polyamory as about sex at all, but it's more about just getting aligning with the resources that align with you and recognizing that that may not always just be in one person or like your tiny little peak. um yeah.
I feel like every time you explain this, I'm realizing more and more that I'm closer to that definition. Not that not in a sexual way at all. I am very loyal and like very monogamous on the
Yeah.
sexual front of things. Um, but I'm realizing more and more that there there are different people that are better for different situations than others. Like I've been with my partner for a really long time, right? And we used to have this thing where we do everything for each other and we fulfill each other's every need. And lately I've been having more community and love, like really close relationships with other people, mostly women, but some men too. Um, Again, not sexual, but as friends. And I'm realizing that depending on a situation, sometimes it's not best to call my partner. Not because he can't fulfill it, he can, but there's somebody that can fulfill it better. And sometimes it's also, he knows me so well, and we've kind of created this identity as a couple that is amazing, that I love, but it also means that we can't really see outside of that identity very well. And somebody else giving me perspective that might not even have to do with our relationship. Usually it doesn't, because I don't really take advice from people
Mhm.
very much about my
Mhm.
relationship. But their perspective is like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And it's not just even with him. I think also having people from different races, different backgrounds, um different locations. Like last week you gave me advice that nobody here would have given me. Knowing, like, they know me and my partner together. Like, you came in from somebody that's never seen us physically. You've actually never seen my partner, like had a conversation with him.
Mhm.
Um but the advice that you gave, I wouldn't have gotten it from anybody here that knows
Because
us.
we're so
Or that
multidimensional.
even,
We're so multidimensional. And I don't even mean that in
yes.
a woo-woo way. I just mean like multifaceted. So there are different aspects
Yes.
that get activated. And so I've even been exploring this as, a polyamorous person I am sexually non-monogamous, right? So I can be sexually
Mm-hmm.
non-monogamous. And I don't expect my partners to be monogamous. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that I don't have programming around jealousy that can come up. And what I've found that has happened for me when it comes to like seeing my partners relate to other people in loving ways, it's easy for me to release jealousy when I realize there's a very specific way that other person activates them that is just simply not the way I activate them, nor do I have to. And the way I activate
Yes.
them is its own thing and it's okay. And it may have varying degrees of intensity. Like I have a partner who I talk to who our relationship actually isn't very sexual, but we have like a lot of depth. We're very close physically and we have like a lot of emotional depth. And she will yabber on about like
Mm-hmm.
this girl she's crushing on and it's so intense. And I'm like, at times I thought, why can't she talk about me like with that level of intensity? But I've come to realize like
Mm-hmm.
that's not even what I want. Like I personally don't even want that level of like super intense way of I just like a very chill, like I like what I got with this partner. I enjoy what I have with this partner. It's what I want. So then why do I need to feel
Yeah.
threatened with what she has with someone else that is different? I don't need to. And that comes
Yeah.
back to what we're talking about, coming home to the self and being able to tolerate differences. I can even tolerate differences with how my partners go about relationships. No, because I'm more solid in myself. So one of the things that's been helpful for me is to get clear on, it's not to be limited by the label, but to get clear on what kind of approach I'm taking to polyamory. And that's been a process, and I know it's an ongoing process. Right now, my approach is solo polyamory, which is I am my own self, but I can have very deep connections with other people. What that means is I don't, because I'm not necessarily trying to have a primary partner in this moment. I don't think it doesn't really resonate with me
Mm-hmm.
actually. There was a time when I think I told you I was trying to have a primary partner. And then I had a partner
Yeah.
who had a primary partner. And I saw like a lot of couples privilege they talk about that happened with that. And like that partner felt like it was okay to treat me as less than because they had a primary partner. And I was like, yeah, that's not how I want to do it. Like I'm more interested in a egalitarian approach to polyamory where every relationship is not the same, but every partnership has its own space to grow into whatever it is. And there isn't like this other person who I
Mhm.
don't even know who is controlling what kind of relationship I get to have with you. I don't like that. So from that experience of being the secondary partner, I was like, I don't think I need a primary partner, but I can tolerate partners who have different ways of managing their multiple relationships because I'm so secure in the way I'm managing mine, you know. So the fact that I am my own partner
Yeah.
first, I am my own home first, means that I don't have to try to change too much how other people deal with stuff outside of me. I will be giving input to how they deal with me specifically in the moments that we are sharing. But in terms of like whether or not they're on paper monogamous, which I don't fully like, I prefer for my partners to like be open about what they're doing, or whether or not they're like sleeping with every person they see or whatever it is, the way they manage their stuff isn't as threatening to me because I don't need to control
Mhm.
them to feel a sense of home. I control me to feel a
Yeah.
sense of home. And that has been a very
Yeah.
liberating experience for me. It's this idea of it's like being alone but being in community. And I like to play with words. I've really been thinking about the word alone. I'm like, I'm never alone, but alone is what? It's all one. So whenever I'm all one with myself, that's what aloneness helps me to do. It helps me to become all one with myself. So because I am whole and all one with myself, it's easier for me to relate to other people because I'm not relating from a fractured place. And so it's just this dynamic of like being with people but being alone. Like technically you're always with yourself even when you're with other people, right? And finding
Yeah.
that curious
Yeah.
balance. And I'm coming more and more into the space of where I'm more comfortable with being alone, not to isolate, but to not need other people to be exactly as me.
Yeah. That's similar to the tree analogy that I gave. But how does that then relate to other things, right? Because you've talked about coming home to yourself on a relationship basis, sexual and non-sexual, and how that looks in the world. But I feel like that coming home to yourself has also changed how you approach everything in life, you know? So can you give another example of how that
Yeah,
has
I just go with the flow,
changed
man.
things for
I'm not 100% zen, but I'm pretty zen. Like I'm pretty zen. That's what coming home to myself has.
you with short moments
I
of
am zen with
freakouts.
short books. Yes, I do have my freak out moments. I'm still human. You know what I'm saying? But I'll catch myself. Um, yeah, coming home to myself. Okay, let's even talk about what coming home to ourselves is outside of just this sort of ethereal thing. Human beings, I believe, are as much a part of nature as the trees and the birds and the wind and the planets and the ocean and the breeze. So a big part of coming home to myself
Yeah.
has been to feel how I fit into the energies that exist around me. And what that has meant is that I have harnessed the capacity to manipulate energy, manipulate nature, manipulate circumstances. Some people call it manifestation to create things.
Mm-hmm.
So basically,
Yeah.
and the way that it happens, I think you and I was on your previous podcast some time ago, and I was telling you that I
Yeah.
was studying high magic. Honestly, high magic only
Mm-hmm.
gave me an explanation for something I was intuitively already doing. So studying it wasn't the thing that activated it. It was just like, oh, like this is actually a phenomenon. Coming home to myself is understanding that there is a very
Mm-hmm.
true inner world creates outer world reality. A very true, I am as much a part of the
Mm-hmm.
reality I see outside of myself just by being my individual self and nurturing my energy and my thoughts more than anything else. Because the key to manifestation is thoughts, emotion, and action. Those are the three things to manifestation. What are
Yeah.
you thinking? How are you feeling about it? And then, the energy you're like the practical steps you put towards it. What does that mean? I don't have to freak out about shit anymore. Because now that I've come home to the fact that I am
Mm-hmm.
as much a part of nature as the natural phenomenon, I am myself a natural phenomenon. I'm not super dependent on
Mm-hmm.
externalized society limited definitions to feel safe. I don't need to be married to feel safe. I don't need to have a corporate job to feel safe. I don't need to have a whole bunch of people like me or
Mm-hmm.
understand me to feel or be safe. I get to more or less live a meditative experience, which is how I see myself. I'm kind of constantly in a meditative state and allow that to put me in flow state.
Mm-hmm.
So coming home to myself has meant that I approach life from flow
Mm-hmm.
state more than anything else. That applies to my business. You have conversations with me where you say I still freak out a little bit about my business. I'm working on how to really activate flow state fully in my business, but it comes down to, okay, what things
Yeah.
do I need to get done business wise, instead of just like freaking out and trying to create this very rigid structure. There's a certain allowing of my thoughts and my emotions to create action in me, and then observing the pattern of actions, and then the structure gets formed around whatever pattern of action I have seen. um, I hope I'm not getting too technical here, but the point is,
Yeah.
the point is there's a greater degree of flow that I feel from coming home to myself, a greater degree of inner peace, and a greater degree of trust, because I know that I am one with all
Yeah.
that is. I'm not separate from all that is. And so I really, there's nothing to worry about, you know. You caught
Mm-hmm.
me on a Zen day. You caught me on a Zen day.
It was what was meant to be. It was what was meant to be. I think the way that I summarize that also, or not summarize it, but a side note is what I do and what I receive is unrelated. You know, it is because we think that based on what you do, you receive a certain type of reward.
Hmm.
But and that is so tied to
Well, explain that more, because I would
corporate.
argue that they are related, but what do you mean exactly? Like what you do and what you receive aren't related. Do you mean like the um
Not related. It's related in the sense of what you said that your thoughts, feelings, and actions are aligned, and that's what creates
right.
what you want in the world. But it's not related in the sense that the amount of work that you put in
Okay.
equals the amount that you
Right, it's exponential because it's
because
exponential.
yes,
Absolutely.
that idea is very limiting. And I heard somebody speaking the other day, and she was saying that that is very much something that people of the global majority, which is people of color, are very tied to because of the shit we've endured and the things we've had to deal with. And so when we start to think that what I do and what I receive is unrelated or can be
I
unrelated
would say that, I would say more, just to
in
be
regards to
clearer, I would say like the level of investment is not exactly what's like you can receive exponentially more than the energy put in. Yeah, to be
yes,
clear.
yes, yeah. Once you start understanding that that's possible, then you can
Yeah,
flow even more.
absolutely.
And you can also think and create and innovate in ways that is more possible for you, right? Like how can you, like if you just start thinking, how can you receive more without putting more in or putting less in and receiving more?
You know,
And I'm obviously, you can think about that in regards to money, but also in regards to everything else. Like what, and not in I don't want to work and I don't want to do anything. But okay, how can I get the relationships that feel easy to me? Right? Like my relationship with you, like you thank me all the time for like spending time with you or like giving you advice or talking to you through something, but it really doesn't feel like I've done anything. Like I do value it, I really do, but it doesn't feel like work.
Because
It
it's
doesn't feel
aligned with
like
your way of
anything. And
being.
yet, yes,
So
yes,
we've been taught we have to stress to receive. So I don't think it's that
yes.
you have to think about how you have to give less, because I've had this thought with myself, and I was thinking, man, Cherise, because there can also be an imbalance where you try to get as much as you can without giving anything. That's where we have greed and capitalist society,
True, true,
right? It operates on that. What's the least value I can give while getting the most response? And you have people selling you shitty stuff, whatever. But I do think
true, true.
how, so I had that thought this week too. And I had the thought because I'm staying with a friend,
Mm-hmm.
and she asked me to make some contributions to the house. And at first I thought, should I have to make contributions of this cantidad of this quantity? Sorry, Spanish. Like, should it, maybe it should be less? Like, why do I have to give so much? Da, 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 da. And so I started thinking, well, Cherise, why are you thinking from such a limited point of view where it's like you are receiving so much
Mm-hmm.
from being here? It feels like you're just trying to get as much as you can while giving as little. And so I had to check myself and
Yeah,
say, no, what is the abundance state of mind? Abundant state of mind is I have more, I can give as much as I can share as much as I can, and I will share as much as I can. However, I think that's where we start. So I think we do start with sharing as much as we can from a place of ease and joy. That's the key. It doesn't have to be stressful. From a place of ease and joy, but then
mm-hmm.
also knowing you will receive exponentially more. And what I ended up thinking about was the example of farming. You plant a seed, you do relatively minimal effort compared to the plant that comes out of the ground. And so there is
True.
something about just setting up the environment for exponential growth,
Mm-hmm.
taking
Yes.
intentional actions, but then also trusting that there is a certain level of letting go that you have to do even to receive the fruit. And so, as I see it
Yeah.
with work, for example, my thing is, how can I show up in the ways that feel most natural to me? That's what I hear when you talk about or friendship. You're showing up in a way that feels more natural to me, to you. That doesn't mean that you're not putting in effort per se. It's just it's
Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be stressful.
Yeah.
It's a aligned expression, but then also trusting
Yeah.
that it will
I
like
think.
exponentially come back at you. And that's true. It does make you feel
Yeah.
safer when you recognize that. I've recognized that being back in Jamaica, for example, this time around. Um, I don't have a family home to go back to, so I would think I don't have a home to go back to. Since I've been here,
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that there's so many friendships I didn't even realize I was investing in, that my friends feel so happy to have me in their house, to
Yeah.
drive me around, to buy me a phone. Like it's like, and so I'm sitting it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels like an exponential receiving of the results of relating to these people from a genuine heart place over the years. I didn't expect it. It wasn't from a place.
But you've been sewing.
I've been sewing
You've been sewing
and I
this
didn't
whole time.
realize it. And
Yeah.
I also felt that with the amount of people from Mexico who send me messages to make sure I'm okay during Hurricane Beryl. I'm like, oh, like
Yeah.
I've been like, there are relationships there. They're real relationships that are
Mm-hmm.
exponentially blossoming. And I would then want to challenge the way we think about wealth, Sheedia, because in the last year, my experience of wealth has been way less about money and much more about people. And I am so
Mm.
wealthy in community. I give thanks. I am so wealthy in community and I'm so grateful. And I do believe it comes from just the work I've been sowing in myself, because the work I'm sowing in myself, I'm wanting to show up for myself in a particular way. And naturally that flows over in how I treat others. And there's an exponential um, receiving, and I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to end this episode. I don't want to chop this one up.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else that you feel like is missing?
I would say at the beginning of my journey in 2018, before I went to Chicago, which I think was the start of pulling away from, let's say, my programmed way of being,
Your family?
I had a
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
homesickness within me. It felt weird. I would say I'm homesick for a home I don't know. And I
Hmm.
guess I just feel like speaking to anybody who has a similar feeling, where it's like, I don't know what home I'm homesick for, but I just feel it. Just keep walking and keep turning inward and keep trusting that the answers will come from within, because they will. I think, I hope. At least for me, they did. They will. And the homesickness that
It
we
will.
often feel outside of ourselves could very well be a homesickness for self. So when we feel homesick, or when we feel rejected, or when we feel abandoned, my first thing is, okay, how can I show up for myself? What can I do in this moment to make myself feel loved? Practical things. I can go fry an egg because I'm hungry. I can go wash my face because it feels sticky. I can sit down and take a deep breath
Mm-hmm.
for a minute. I can call a friend because I need connection. I can draw something because it's going to make me feel creative. Like these really practical stuff. I'm not just saying, oh, how can I show up for myself? Okay, I love you. And then kiss yourself in the mirror. I'm not just talking about that. Like very practically check in with what you are needing. And as much as you're capable, providing it for yourself or asking for support to provide it for yourself. And I think little by little, that's what builds home within you.
The only thing I will add to that is without bypassing how you truly feel,
Absolutely.
you know? Because sometimes what you need is a good
Yes.
cry or a good scream or a good pelting
Yeah.
something or something that isn't necessarily cute and gentle and all that. It might be rough and ugly to some, but there's so much beauty in that too. There's so much rawness and power in those
Yeah.
things as well. So give it to yourself.
And it will come back to you too.
Yeah. You're the best investment you can make. Because if I invest in anything else, whether financially, time wise, love wise, anything, I cannot control what that other person or company or government does with that investment. But if I invest within myself, I'm 100% in control of what I can do that. And it's not about control, but it is about you can do whatever you want with it. And nobody can take that away from you. Like, the only thing that could possibly take that away from you is something with your health and something that affects your mind, oftentimes. Because when you invest in yourself, even if you lose full control of your body and you're paralyzed, your mind is still there and your mind can still do amazing things, including healing yourself.
And that's a conversation for another day, because we really
Yes.
can heal ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, people. That's it for this episode about coming home to yourself. A little bit of Cherese's story. We would love to hear from you, our community, our people. Share your insights, share what you got from this, share what you don't agree with us on. Spotify is the number one place to do that. You can do that on YouTube if you're listening there. But you can also find me on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Hey Sheedia. I will drop my handle in the description of this, and you'll find that wherever you're listening. All right, that's it, and see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.